So
is that the same one that you could try?
No.
So you're not going to be here Wednesday or Thursdays?
The Thursday I don't come usually anyway, so Wednesday I'm not going to be here. But we'll be here tomorrow night. Mr. Shem, I apologize about tonight. I thought I misunderstood something which Rabbi Tamla texted me, so it's my fault. I'm sorry. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Mashiach tonight, and it's a little bit wild what I'm going to say to you tonight, but
Should you be recorded?
yeah, I think it'll be recorded, but it's important, I think, nevertheless. It was a very popular, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, there's a very popular book which is very popular in the secular world, which was on the New York Times bestseller list for 139 weeks. It's called Conversations with God. It's by a fellow, not Jewish, Neil Donald Walsh. It has a lot of very strange things in it, and but basically he claims to have had nevuah, that God spoke to him through writing. In other words, that he wrote down questions and God dictated to him, so to speak, what to write back. And I'm assuming that most of this stuff is hallucination, but there's a lot of cool hallucination there. And and one of the cool, he has a lot of profound stuff about the purpose of creation, and it's funny because he goes back and forth between important things like the purpose of creation and relatively unimportant things like the Democrat, basically the liberal democratic agenda of the 1990s, so which God seems to advocate. But in any event, it's very interesting reading. It certainly is worthwhile for the poor, as long as you know how to sift through the garbage, and it's also entertaining. So one of the things that she says, which I wanted to talk about, was this guy, Neil Donald Walsh, asked God, "How come my prayers are not answered?" And my prayers never answered. He said, so God says back to him, all prayers always are answered. Mamish like Reb Tzadok, Lahavdil says. Reb Tzadok says all prayers at all times are always answered. So that's the case. So he says, wait, come on, God, what are you talking about, right? So it doesn't happen that way. So God says, in this book, he says, very, very deep fort. If it's really God speaking, it's not a chiddush. But I think since Neil Donald Walsh speaking, I think it is a chiddush. But is that you're answered not according to what you say, but according to your underlying thought. Meaning that very often we daven for something, but our underlying thought is we don't really want it to happen, or we don't believe it will happen. For example, on a very simple level, one, I can daven for somebody to get better from an illness. But if I don't believe deep down that person can be healed from that illness, my prayer, as sincere as it may seem to me superficially, is missing that, is not really being answered, not because it's not being answered, but because that's not the depth of your prayer. The depth of your prayer is something else. If I pray to be wealthy, but I don't really believe in that, and not only that, if I became, I know deep down somewhere inside of me that if I became wealthy, it wouldn't be good for me, although, not talking about me personally, for me it'd be very good, but then...
You're an exception.
Right, no, just kidding. I'm sure it wouldn't be good for me either. Then that underlying thought is really what the prayer is about. Yeah.
So an ignoramus who's less bound by the reality of the situation, that his prayer is more likely to be answered.
Oh, that's the classic.
Or that it takes more emunah for a person who's learned to have their prayer.
So that's mamish, the classic Hasidic story. So that's the Hasidic story which we all know about the little kid who comes into shul in Rosh Hashanah, right? And he doesn't know how to daven. There are two versions of the story, right? Doesn't know how to daven. Either he takes out his whistle and he starts whistling, or there's going to one his shepherd's whistle, or in the other version he opens up the siddur and he says, I know the daven Hashem, but here the letters the alphabets, you take them, and the people in the shul get upset at him, either because he's disrupting with his whistle or because he's a jerk with showing God the olive face, depending on the version of the story. And the Baal Shem Tov turns around and says, you guys, you don't know, his tefillos, he saved the Jews for this year, your tefillos were meaningless. Have you ever heard some version of that story?
Yeah.
Right. So they're different purposes. So what's the point of the story? That's mamish the point you just made. The point is that we come to shul, we daven, but when we daven, since we're such sophisticated idiots, so therefore, our underlying thoughts are not underlying thoughts which are really, really, really trusting, sincere, and desirous of what we're saying. And that's when we do have kavanah. Our underlying thoughts are things that are, yeah, right, come on, you think you're going to get this? No way it's going to happen. So that, my tefillos are answered. But they're answered according to what my underlying thought is. And if I'm an uncomplicated kid, this is mama should push for Hasidus, this idea. If I'm an not today's Hasidus, but Hasidus Baal Shem Tov. If I'm an uncomplicated, simple, but sincere and earnest and trusting kid, my feelings are much more likely to be accepted. So because they're real and they're in sync with myself. Now, the classic case this comes out is in the topic we've been dealing with the past few days, which is Mashiach. We daven for Mashiach. We always say we want Mashiach. We're so full of baloney. If Mashiach coming meant that I would have to move to, I'm not saying it does. No, necessarily it does. But it means I have to move to the Negev and live without my cell phone or without my cars or without my computer, right? Rahman al-Litzlan, without my email.
Do it tomorrow.
There's no, so you have a chance of bringing it about. There's no way I want that. And Mashiach comes, it would spoil my plans. My plans are to become, to exploit the current situation and make myself as influential, powerful, famous as possible, right? And Mashiach came, it would ruin everything. So therefore, what's deep down? When Lubavitcher davens, and they're very sincere. But what do they want? They don't want the Mashiach. They want the Rebbe to come back and show the world that they were right. That's what?
You missed it.
We're not better, though. That's the point. Well, I'm not saying we're better. I'm just saying we're no better, but they're no better. Nobody's better in this case. Okay. So the bottom line is that we say we want Mashiach, but we don't. It's a superficial thought, but it's not the underlying thought. That's why it says that Rabbi Chia and his children were davening, and they said Mashi Baruach, and wind started blowing, and Morid Geshem, and the rain started coming down. And Hashem said, if they get to Mechayim Mesim, then the dead are going to come back to life. So he sent Gabriel down, or Gabriel, I forget who, to go confuse them. So it's an amazing thing. He's God. It doesn't happen. So they'll say Mechayim Mesim, and he won't be Mechayim Mesim. Right? They weren't even that as a minion. So 3 people. So no. If a really sincere tefillah is said to be Mechayim Mesim, God is stuck. He's got to be Mechayim Mesim. Those are the rules. So that's why he has to stop the tefillah before it gets to that point.
That's one of the reasons why Hashem. That's one of the reasons why Hashem didn't want Moshe Rabbeinu to go into the land. The base of Mikdash would be
right. He'll become and that's
stop davening.
Right, and it's also why he told him to stop davening, because had he davened more, Hashem eventually would have to relent at some point. So the idea of tzipisol Yeshua, to yearn for the redemption, is not a simple one at all. Because yearning for redemption doesn't mean that I pay lip service to yearning to the redemption. And this is one of the questions they ask you when you get to heaven after you die. It's not so simple. See, tzipisol Yeshua doesn't mean even I want Mashiach so much as, do I yearn for that redemptive state? Do I yearn for that state in which everybody will know God? Or since I get such a thrill coming to Or Sameach and teaching Bali Tshuva, do I not want everybody to know God? Because it's much more fun, right? So the question is, how do I think? What's my underlying thought?
Wait. So let me ask you.
Let me just say one more thing. Last night, I went to. I have a tailor who I use who comes in from Thailand. So he's
Jewish?
What? No, he's not Jewish, but he speaks fluent Hebrew because he was in Israel. He was a Thai laborer in Israel for many years. So actually, he does custom suits pretty cheap. So and I lost a lot of weight recently, Baruch Hashem. So 6 inches off my waist.
Wow.
Now
He has a body pair of
I have a new suit. Wow. So I was the last customer of the day. So he decided he's going to have a long philosophical, theological conversation with me about, in English, comparative Hindu and Jewish philosophy. He's Hindu. So he told me in Hinduism, he didn't know that Judaism believed in reincarnation. He said, but among the Hindus, he said, everybody comes back 6.4 million times. I said, we don't have that many times. So
Once.
yes. So so that was one of the things they're talking about, and they're very similar things in Hinduism about the Yeridas Adoros, how all the eras and epics are huge. They're not short; they're huge. So we're talking about 6,000 years. There's one cycle, there are more cycles, and how we view it and how they view it, and then they don't have this concept of Mashiach. They hold that this age just ends when the whole world. What?
They don't seem to have a sense of time. I remember when I studied it, in university many years ago. In other words, they have hundreds of thousands of years, and they call it yugas, I think it is.
Yeah, right. That's right.
There's times, but they don't.
Yeah.
It's the strangest thing. They don't have a sense of time. Everything's just one great big repetitive. It's like a circle.
Right, goes back around again.
It's like a circle. It just keeps repeating itself.
Yeah.
There's nothing. I don't know. It's just hard to see where it's really going.
Yeah. So I don't know. He wasn't clear on that concept either. But obviously they hold that this world has no hope.
Right.
God comes, like he takes the figure of a black horseman on a black horse, and he destroys the world, and that's it. And we start over again, we're now at the lowest level, then we start again and go back down again. Anyway, so I said, well, we have a different concept, of Mashiach, the Messianic age. And I said, the Messianic age is when it's not here. The Jews, had a long discussion about the temple and Yerushalayim, about Kohanim, what rabbis are. He was very hard to grasp the concept of a rabbi. Because, if you're a priest, then, you could do special stuff, right? Rabbis are not special in any way, shape, or form. They're not only that, obviously they don't actually necessarily have they don't have any special rights or privileges, and they don't have to actually be practicing. You can be a lawyer and be a rabbi too. It was very fascinating for him. Anyway, so getting back to the topic, so Mashiach, so I said we don't have much. The Messiah could have come much earlier, but he didn't. I'm almost finished. The Messiah could have come much earlier, but he didn't come because we didn't merit it, because we're not behaving the way we're supposed to behave. So he said, so you really think your Messiah is going to come? Because when is anybody ever going to behave, right? And he had a long talk with me about the fact that Jews argue all the time. Why do we always argue? Why do we always argue? What?
How does he know that?
He lived in Israel.
Oh.
I know Shatnez like that. He knew all that Shatnez. So I explained how we're supposed to argue. We're supposed to argue the base medrash and then like each other afterwards. Anyway, but I said, you're right. This is it's a problem. I don't know how Mashiach's ever going to come because I don't see how we're going to actually get into that state. But
wasn't there an ultimatum given that if the world was in such disarray that there was no choice but for Mashiach to come, that was the other option?
Right, but it's not going there either. In other words, we're in this kind of like middle where everything is lousy, but not completely catastrophic. Right. So
Let's make it lousy.
right. No. The pasuk says, we say it in Chunaranana, Hayom in Bekolo Tishmo. So one of the Tanoim once met Eliyahu Navi and asked him, when is Mashiach coming? So Eliyahu said, Hayom. He was ecstatic. So the next day, Mashiach didn't come. So he came back to Eliyahu came back to me, he said, what happened? He said, Hayom in Bekolo Tishmo. Today, if you listen to his voice. So they say, Rabbi Abraham Eliyahu Kaplan brings it down, I don't know if you're aware, that anybody who ever heard the Gra say those words, in Chunranra, Hayom im Bekolo Tishmo, became about Tshuva on the spot. See, it's a Litvish miracle story. So what Rav Avraham Kaplan says is that that's all. It can take one person going out and saying Hayom im Bekolo Tishmo, and perhaps that could be it. It takes one very, very real, sincere person. I don't know if one is enough, but it takes a few very real, sincere people. That's what will ultimately bring redemption. When you have people whose underlying thoughts are real and sincere, like their superficial thoughts, that's what's necessary.